paragraph inside the table cell, inside the table row, and inside the whole table. So what I do is, oh, also this XPath is a shortcut for asterisk, ID, the whole thing. It's kind of faster to write. Definitely not fast. So we will find the element with that ID, and then we will go up the tree to the table row, or to the table cell, then to the table row, and then we will find the other table cell and click on the delete user link. That's pretty awesome to do, and I've been in a lot of situations in which I needed to do that. I just want to find something in a row, something in a cell, then go to the row above, and then find another cell inside that row. With CSS, there's no real way to do it. There's a couple of hacks you can do. CSS gives you the plus sign. That means I want the sibling right in the right of my element. So you can find the cell and go to the right and then go to the right again. But that's not bottom-up navigation, and it's really brittle. If they add one column or if they decide to just put this on the right and this on the left, everything will break. In those cases, I guess I advise you to use XPath. I use it myself. It's not so bad, but you may want to just focus on one and try to keep it consistent across all your tests. So that's one of the cases. The second one is Selenium 2. This one's actually pretty interesting. I'm still not completely decided why you shouldn't use CSS or why it's not my recommendation. But I'm just going to explain you what I think. Selenium 2 has this great WebDriver idea of page elements, right? Web elements. WebDriver will find an element first, and then you will have a handle to that element. I made a mistake there, man. That's mine. So it will find an element for you. It will give you the handle, which is in this case the menu variable or the menu element, and then you can find stuff inside that element itself. So you don't always have to search in the full tree. You can just find something, keep it here, do some stuff, then come back to this element and find something inside it, and then find something inside that element. And that's pretty handy. It helps a lot with page objects, and it makes code way more readable. So instead of doing the nesting in CSS, like in this case, I will do find me the menu ID thing, and then inside the menu, find me the input that has its name. You will do something like, all right, find me the menu. Now I have the menu. Now inside the menu, this should be menu, not driver. Find me the search, and now I have the search. And I can do whatever I want with search. Ouch, this is search. I wrote this like 15 minutes before. So again, I can reuse the menu again and find more elements inside the menu. So I don't really need to do this. This is actually duplication. It's not awesome, because every time, if the menu changes, you will have to go to all your locators and actually fix them. Whereas in this case, all you gotta do is just fix the menu, and then all the elements will just be found in the same way. I think that's the right approach. Just leave the nesting inside your code and not inside the locators in your code. Also, there's another insight. We've been talking with Simon Stewart about CSS and how they work in Selenium 2. And there's some bad news there. Selenium 2 doesn't have this idea of multiple windows. Selenium 2 will not open two windows for your app. It will just open your app. In Selenium 1, if you've written tests in Selenium 1, you will notice that two windows come up. The Selenium window that has the steps that are currently running and has the JavaScript libraries that Selenium will use in it, and the application window that will change its DOM and move all the time, and it's the one in which you're affecting stuff. In Selenium 2, there's only one window, and you can't inject stuff there, because when the DOM changes, because when the application goes to a different page, the whole DOM will refresh. And the stuff that you injected will not be there anymore. So Simon found this problem. It's like, oh, I can't inject Sisal there, because every time the window changes, Sisal is not going to be there anymore, and I can't trust on Sisal being there all the time. At the same time, I can inject Sisal every time people change the page, or every time people try to do a CSS lookup. So there's no real solution. We couldn't find one yet. Reality is that with the decision that Simon took is, with the browsers that do support CSS natively, like Firefox, Chrome, Opera, everything but IE, and the newer versions, the older versions of Firefox and the older versions of Opera and whatever, Selenium will just rely on that. It will not inject anything. It will just call the browser's native, find me this element by CSS, and it will just trust that. In IE's case, it will inject CSL every time it wants to do a lookup. So if your test says something like find this element by CSS, Selenium will just go inject CSL in the page and then call CSL saying, hey CSL, find me this element, and we'll get it back. That's a pretty painful performance hit, because every time a command has to be set, we gotta send like 20K, I don't really know how much CSL weighs, but 20K over the wire to the browser so that we make sure that it's there. And that may not be as fast as it is in Selenium 1. So what's the thing? All right, in IE we have CSL, and in the other browsers we just have the native CSS implementation. And I don't know if I said that before. I wrote about that in a blog post in the Sauce blog. CSL actually doesn't implement the standard, the full standard. CSL does whatever they thought it was best, which means they will not have env of type. They will not have env child. They will have just env, which for me is better, but for the standard it's not. And other browsers went with the standard, of course. So it may be inconsistent if you rely on CSL functionality that is not available in the CSS implementation and the standard implementation. So those things, again, are things like header or input or complexity inside the node. And I believe that regex is inside contains. That's a CSL thing. I gotta confirm it, but I think so.
So
yeah.
You're saying that N is not supported in all browsers?
Right. The question was, am I saying env is not supported in all browsers? And the answer is yes. In Selenium 2, the browsers that get CSL injected will find the element using env. The other browsers, which are big majority, will just use their own native CSS parsing, and env is not available there. So you will probably get a lookup exception.
So if you want consistent CSL performance and crappy performance, use IE.
Yes, exactly. If that's what you're looking for, definitely go with that.
Right.
Yeah, sorry about that. We may find ways to improve it, but nowadays there's a lot of discussion right now going on. And Simon again said, we still didn't really release a 2.0 version. We're still in beta, and we're totally open for opinions on how this could be implemented better. If you really want to have CSL, or if you really want to do the standard CSS implementation, how we can do it in IE, there's a lot of stuff to work on. I actually wanted to measure performance in Selenium 2 in other browsers, but I didn't get the time to do it. I will probably do it in the future and tweet about it. Just put the JSON file up in GitHub so that people just can pull it and do interesting metrics and take conclusions. Now, there's some references that you may be interested in. I wrote several blog posts, so most of them are me. Please let me know if there's another stuff that you should read about it. So the first one, start improving your locators, will suggest you how to start moving your basic XPath, basic things like // equals space. It's pretty straightforward. Another one is the one in which I'm explaining why CSL is different than CSS, which are the locators that you can leverage in Selenium 1 and the ones that you should be aware of if you're writing Selenium 2 test. There's another one, CSS locators demystified. It's where it kind of explains the most powerful things, like contains and sub-pattern matching, things like that. And there's also a quick reference. That is not me. Adam Gaucho wrote that. It's I have it in my desk all the time. It's just a, what do you call those, quick sheet? It's like a small sheet with all the basics. That you can read. Sheet. So you can see that. I'm gonna go through the useful tools now. Should we do the Q&A first, or just go with the tools? All right, tools. Which tools can you use to write good CSS locators and test them and write your test using them? Number one, Selenium IDE. And you will say, no, Selenium IDE actually does XPath. It doesn't do CSS. And I will answer, yes, but I wrote a new functionality inside Selenium IDE that will do CSS first. And it will suggest CSS. And if you can't find anything with CSS, it will do XPath. It's pretty lame. It's like 12 lines of code, but it does a pretty good job. Actually finds using amp, ID, class. It will also do the nice version. It will not do the ugly attribute square brackets thing, but if it's an IE, it will use hashbang, a hashtag. If it's a class, it will use the dot. So it's a nice try for record and playback. Hoping that the next version of IDE release will just include this. So from now on, every test that you record, first we'll try the basic locators like Selenium's ID or Selenium's link text. If it can't find anything with that, it will just do CSS, and then it will fall back to XPath in some cases. Now, the last time I did this presentation, which was in the Selenium conference, one guy in the crowd said, hey, sounds like the conversion is pretty straightforward. Can I write a script that does the conversion for me? And I said, yes, you totally should be able to write it. It just requires a lot of horrible regular expressions matching and stuff. And after that presentation, I just decided to do it myself. So if you go to, that took me off the slides. Hope I can go back. So if you go to GitHub, it's open source. It's santiYCR/CSSify. You will see that you can call it from the terminal. It's a terminal application. I wanted to make a web app. I guess you just need a Python web server and import a library and use it. I may do it in the future for the people that is lazy. But all you need to do is just install Python, check out, clone the repo, and you will get a CSSify .py script, which is, here. So once you have it, all you do is just call